And here we are again. Hi guys, nice to have you back. Welcome to the 10th episode of the Liebherr R960 build-up. Today it's all about the exterior of the model. This video is again available in English and German. You can find the link to the German version at the top of the right corner. Wie immer ist diese Folge auch auf Deutsch verfügbar. Du findest den Link zur deutschen Episode hier oben rechts in der Ecke. Last time it was all about electronics. If you haven't seen this episode yet, you'll find the link to the whole playlist in the video description. As always, let's first take a quick look at the components of this episode. First of all, there is the cover for the battery compartment. It consists of these two parts. Then there is this part of the cover that sits directly behind the cabin on the left side. And this part is located on the right side, directly above the hydraulic tank. And last but not least, of course, there is the counterweight. Then a few small add-on parts, such as railings and mirrors and the exhaust. All investment brass castings, by the way. And everything is completed with this anti-slip surface. I start with the panel that is located on the left side behind the cabin. First I fit the small handle. Incidentally, this is also an investment brass casting. To avoid damaging the paint when I press it in, I cover the part with some adhesive tape and press it in carefully with the parallel pliers. With these pliers I can control the force very well and press the handle in exactly straight. The anti-slip surface consists of a special rough adhesive film that is cut to size for this model using a laser cutter. The individual parts are simply applied just like normal stickers. For each part of the film I take the time to align everything precisely and stick it on straight. I always start with one edge of the sticker that I align with one edge of the exterior. Because the material is quite rigid, the individual parts can be stuck on freehand without any issues. And with this, that part of the exterior is already prepared. And next up is the cover for the right hand side, which sits above the hydraulic tank. I first check that the holes for the railing have not become too small due to the paint. Since everything fits here, I can glue the parts directly. I use a thick super glue and apply something on a plastic bag. I'm using a wooden stick to apply the glue, which lets me dose the glue very precisely. Here too there is a small black handle. As the cutout is slightly oversized, I also glue this handle in place. Incidentally, this cover is for the tool compartment of the real machine. Now a little more electronics. LED headlights are installed in the lower edge of the cover. The SMD LEDs are soldered together with the series resistors on this small circuit board. All that is missing now is a connection cable. The series resistors allow the LEDs to be supplied directly with battery voltage. After soldering, a short function test of course is a must. And this looks very good. To make the circuit board look a little bit more like a real headlight, it is glued to the frame, and this small sheet of acrylic glass is placed in front of the headlight. However, the protective films must first be removed before installation. This also includes the transparent film on the back, which is easy to forget. The paint can simply be pressed into the frame. Without adhesive, there is no risk of the sheet turning white. You have most probably already experienced this when using superglue before. Next, I can now glue the finished headlight into the cover. Incidentally, the headlight is installed twice in this model. The second one goes into this part, which sits under the cabin. There is a small step at the front of the exterior just above the headlight. I mount this part with M1.6 model hex screws. By the way, this step is also made of an investment brass casting. I screw on this railing that is also made of brass with the same M1.6 screws. As there are several screws, I first screw each one in just a little bit and tighten them as soon as all are installed. Next I am adding a mirror at the front of the railing. Of course I will cover the front surface of the mirror with mirror foil later on. An anti-slip coating is also a must here. Sticking it on is just as easy as with the other cover. The fuel filler cap sits exactly above the hydraulic tank and is simply inserted. I continue with the battery compartment cover. Here again I install an anti-slip coating and a handle. This time the holes have become a little bit too small and need to be drilled out. By the way, the cover is a 3D print. However, the material can be drilled very well and the small holes are not a problem at all. I did paint all the blue, grey and orange parts of this model with a professional spray gun and 2-component paint. Unfortunately, I don't have any videos of the painting process, but here are a few photos. The advantage of this type of paint is of course its durability. It is very resistant to adhesives, solvents or hydraulic oil and doesn't really come off easily. The disadvantage is of course that you have to be very careful that the thickness doesn't get too high. Of course, you also need a lot of equipment to process it. Would I do it again? To be honest, I don't know at the moment. Of course, the paintwork is ideal for the undercarriage and equipment as it is simply very durable. I would have liked the paint to be a little bit thinner in one or the other places of the bodywork though. I think we'll see it with the next model how I decide next time. And in the meantime, let me know in the comments how you would have done it. New for this part of the exterior are some fine-edged stainless steel grills. The material is about 0.1 to 0.2 mm thick. I painted the grills with a spray can and matte black. Before fitting, I separate the grill from the frame by turning it back and forth a few times. As it is only one component paint from the spray can, I have to be a little bit careful with the adhesive when it comes to dissolving the paint. And there is also a reinforcement behind the grill. I also painted this one matte black. I separate it from the bar and sand the edges smooth. As this part is made from aluminium, it is very easy to work on. I also glue the reinforcement in place. Here's a close-up of the whole thing again after drying. I always really like these photo etched grills. In the end, these are the details on the model that are really important to me. You have to look very closely to see the structure of the small grid. Another one of those little details that you really have to know that it's there, otherwise it's easy to overlook. The hood on top of the cover also has some edge grills. I fit these in exactly the same way. So first glue the edge part and then the reinforcements. And then repeat the whole thing for a few times. A small handle is still missing from the front of the hood. This is also a part made from brass investment casting and painted matte black. I screw the finished hood to the engine cover and that completes this part of the exterior. Of course, I don't want to withhold a close-up from you here either. Incidentally, the grills are not that easy to paint without clogging the small openings. Airbrushing would almost be more appropriate here, and yet another task for the to-do list for the next model. last part of the exterior is the ballast weight. It is a relatively straightforward job as only a few parts need to be fitted. Incidentally, the paintwork is a little shinier as it was given a few more coats of clear varnish when it was painted, after, well, an incident during masking. The fend cover on top is another edged part. I bent the 6 fins slightly upwards true to the original. I screw this part on with M1 model hex screws. To turn the 3D print to a real ballast weight, I mount 4 steel plates on the inside for a little extra gravity. Of course, I'll also want to show you a close-up of this part. By the way, I'll apply these stickers all together later on. We come to the final assembly. All the orange strips are screwed to the upper carriage plate from below. Here we can also see the small strip with the LED headlight. I shorten the cable to a reasonable length, and as always with the headlights I perform a brief test for the correct polarity. I connect the cable to the distributor board that you know from the last episode. To make it really neat, I fix the cable with some insulation tape. While doing so, I make sure that it's not under tension on either end. The edge strips are already included on the right hand side panel of the hydraulic tank. Here we can also see that the opening in the cover is directly above the filler opening of the hydraulic tank. At this point I would like to add a small modification, namely a plug for the cable to the headlight. The panel above the tank has to be removed occasionally to service the model. As I don't want to remove the cable from the distributor board every time, I simply use a cable with a plug. By the way, you can order these cables ready-made. They are also available with more than 2 poles. And by now you know the following procedure. Check the polarity of the headlight, add the clamp to the negative pole wire and solder the cable to the plug. What I personally tend to forget is to push the heat shrink tubing onto the cable before soldering. I fixed the cable to the inside of the panel again with insulation tape. And with the plug installed, I like it much better now. Now just quickly lay the other half of the cable and we're done. The left side panel is screwed from below, just like the orange parts. The only thing missing is the ballast weight. It is pushed on from the rear and also screwed from below. The middle cover is simply placed on top and does not need to be screwed on additionally. This is where the battery will be located later on. And that once again brings us to the end of this construction stage. As you can see, there really isn't much left to do before this model is finished. As always, I would be delighted if you leave a sub and a thumbs up. Absolutely free for you and super motivating for me. If you click on the bell, you will also be notified as soon as the next episode is available. If you have any question or anything else you'd like to tell me, just leave it in the comments, just as usual. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.